Lastly, for this session, ladies and gentlemen, we have Adrian Morrow, who is the Managing Director of Antrim Estates Glenarm Castle. Adrian is the organiser of Camp Dalfest, which was previously known as the Dalriada Festival. Camp Dalfest runs over 2 days in July, and it attracts in excess of 25,000 visitors. So before we hear from Adrian, have a look at this.
Much, folks. Whenever Kathy rang me and asked me if I would come and say few words today, I told her I thought that was a bad idea for a couple of reasons. First of all, most of you probably won't understand a word I say. And those that do understand what I'm about to say, I'll probably never do an event again. So I'm afraid it swarts and all at this, and all looks great on the video, but there's a lot of sweat, blood, and tears goes behind something like that. They say travel is a great way of broadening your horizons. After almost 30 years of running events at Glenarm, I got my horizons broadened without leaving Glenarm. You learn very quickly, how to adapt. We started off restoring a walled garden at Glenarm, thinking that once we spent a fortune in the garden, people would roll up to come from all over Northern Ireland to visit our garden. We quickly learned that wasn't the case. Nobody knew where Glenarm was. Everybody just drove through it, and we couldn't hardly get anybody to call to look at the garden. So the only way we thought to get people to come and visit the garden was to start running events. And that was the need. We needed to get feet to Glenarm, and that was the only way we could think of doing it by running events. So our first event kicked off in 1996. We had one ice cream van, one chip van, 2 Irish dancers, one man and his dog. That was it. We charged £1.50 a head at the gate when we had 1,500 visitors, and my father was at the gate that day with a Rover biscuit tin. And at the end of the event, he had £3,000 of cash and this tin. And he came to me and he says, Adrian, I've worked here for 30 years, and that was the easiest £3,000 I've ever earned. So that led us to believe yes, events, let's do more. This is the way we make the money. Let's get on with it. So by 2006, we done an event every year. We were going well right up to 2006, and by then we had 28,000 visitors over the course of a weekend. It was absolutely mental. We were just farmers, diversified, and all of a sudden we were in charge of tens of thousands of people over a weekend. The challenges were many. We had several bomb scares during them events, attempted armed robberies, even tiger kidnapping. Those are the things that large volumes of people can attract. Thankfully, not so much today. It was all cash. Nobody had any cards back then, so you had all this cash. So that attracted all sorts of undesirables. It was a tough time getting through all that, and you questioned what you were doing it for. You were putting your family in danger. Was it worth it? But selfishly, we pushed on. In 2007, then the year after, we had this is a big word for Atlantis Montese, or annus horribilis, as we would call it in Atlantis, or squeaky bum moment. It was a complete disaster, a washout. It rained and rained and rained. We had tens of thousands of people on the site. And by that afternoon, everybody was covered in muck from head to toe. That's the challenge of running events on a greenfield site. When it goes wrong, it goes wrong. I can tell you a wee quick funny story. Everybody deserted off the site. They just ran. You'd have thought it was another bomb scare, which it wasn't, but everybody ran and cleared off. And about 5 o'clock that afternoon, I was standing in the middle of this field of absolute devastation, muck to the knees, wondering what just happened. The team, everybody had gone, I was there on my own. So we went from having thousands of people in the field to myself at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was standing there absorbing the devastation, trying to learn something from it. And I could hear this wee voice away in the background, help, anybody there? I need some help. And I scanned around, I couldn't see anybody. I made my way down through this 2-foot deep muck. And then between two marquees was this little old granny sitting in there, completely stuck in the muck. All I could see was the whites of her eyes. And I had to do a fireman's lift on her and carry her the whole way back up to the road. Got her up there and I said, where's your family, dear? I don't know, she says. They must be here somewhere. I said, there's not a sinner left here but me, my dear. And with that, there was a snore of a car came running down the side of the road, one of those Galaxy people cars, I'll never forget it. And it came right down the road, pulled up beside her, and the driver got out, who was her her son-in-law. And she said, he got out, grabbed the poor old sod by the scruff of the neck, and said, shouted at her and screamed at her, we were in Cullybecky before we realised you weren't in the car. Opened the back door of the boot of the Galaxy and just threw the poor sod onto the back of the boot, and off she went. Now that all sounds horrendous, and it was. But do you know, that's the only thing that I remember in that bad day. And it gave me a laugh that I carried from 2007 to now. It gave me another story. And it helped me get through that devastation. Oh, what a time that was. We lost hundreds of thousands of pounds in that particular year. That was a bad year right across the whole board, actually. But when your event takes a hit like that, it does leave a really bad negative impact, particularly when they'd paid the money to come in. Their customers away, they're not happy, they've had a horrible day, they're cold, they're miserable, their clothes probably went in the bin when they went home. So it's hard to come back from that. So we found, it took, for the next 3 years, it was really challenging to try to get our customer back. We ran really at a loss for 3 more years after that, trying to come back from that. The only way, if we wanted to continue doing events, was to try and de-risk them, move away from the risk. We were weather dependent, so we needed a sunny day for people to come. Well, that just didn't work on a wet day at all. Nobody wanted to get stuck in a green field or park their car, or the ladies didn't want to come, their stiletto heels on them, and so forth and so on. So it meant that to do that, we had to sell tickets in advance, secure sponsors. Two big challenges any event organizer will know. So we looked at it, we revamped it, we rebranded it. We thought the only way we could sell tickets was to do a music festival. People would buy tickets to come to a music festival. So in 2011, we started our first music festival, which is now known today, as you've seen, as Dalfest or Camp Dalfest. Today's challenges are no less stressful, I'm afraid. You know, they could be actually worse than armed robbery. They're quite, today's things are challenging. For me, I've seen it, I've been in the industry a long time, and I'm sort of glad I'm coming to the end of my tenure. What I would say is be careful what you wish for. If you're going to do an event, look hard at your site. Look at your access, look at your parking, road structure, footpaths, electric, water, sewage, proximity to public transport. Take advice from whoever you can before you actually decide to go ahead and do that. You have to think it really through nowadays. And a word of warning as well. The event industry has changed significantly post-COVID. We found post-COVID to be really challenging, completely different than pre-COVID. Your visitor's perception now has changed. You'll be guided by the minority when you go to arrange your event. And those are things that, you have to do now. It's an event organizer's responsibility to give access for all and facilitate everybody to come there. Now, that's okay if you're in the Odyssey or you're in an area that, there's nice tarmac roads, everything's, health and safety's all there, but look out the window there. If you go into an open parkland, there's trees, there's undulation, there's natural things, even in a garden, the same risks are there. And it's more of a claim culture now than ever as well. So you will find that people will attend your event and they will look and they will find places where they can feel that they could have a claim. Social media is a great tool for selling tickets. In the early days, we had to advertise in the Belfast Telegraph. Even had to call up Donna a few times and try and beg for a good deal on an advert on TV. That was probably 50% of the cost of your event back in the 90s. A TV ad and a radio campaign. Now with social media, you can sell tens of thousands of tickets at very little cost at all. But what happens is, when it turns the other way around, when the customer comes with their mobile phones and starts to use their social media, they're very quick to use it against you now. Blackmail, bullying, those are things that just goes on just prior to your event or during your event. And they threaten you with all sorts of things. Oh, if you don't give me my money back, I'm going to go on here, I'm going to lambast you, I'm going to tell everybody else, how bad this was. The only difference is they'll not bully me because I don't look at my social media. I stay away from that. So I just go on and do whatever I'm going to do. And you can't let that sort of thing get to you right on the top of an event. I mean, this year we had an event runner, Christmas event runner, and there was a couple of nights bad weather in the middle of that. And there was a landslip on the shore road at Glenarm, so the road was closed. But there was diversions all the way around. Actually the diversion was shorter than going the shore road. But the social media started, the road's closed. It's closed. It wasn't closed. If you went on to the DOE traffic watch, it was quite clearly said there were diversions in place. But a minority of people decided they didn't want to come out because it was a bad, wet night. They didn't want to get wet. They didn't want the kids to get wet. So they decided they would go on social media and say, you money-grabbing thieves, how dare you run an event on a bad night like this? I'm going to hold you responsible for my kids and my children traveling to your event. So that all goes on. and then cancel that event. I want my money back. But the mentality, as I said to my guys in the office, was, if you had a flight booked, uh, you don't ring up EasyJet and say there's a diversion between here and the airport. I don't care, but there are 350 people going in an airplane. I want my money back, so tell that pilot not to fly. So, that's the analogies you have to sort of think about when you're involved in this. Mitigating the risks, NEBOSH, first aid training, it just goes on the list, and that's all costly, expensive stuff nowadays. You can't get that stuff for cheap. And, the responsibility that comes with it. There was an instance not so long ago where we had a guy, and you're not supposed to administrate first aid now unless you ask the patient, is it okay, sir, if I attend you there? You almost have to get him to sign now the accident report before you can help them. So if he's got two broken arms, you're best just to leave him there if he can't sign. Send for somebody else to come and gather him because that could come back to haunt you. Everybody's watching what you do now. You're under a microscope. If you're going to go ahead and do an event after all the things I've told you, which is up to you to decide. You can forget about working from 9 to 5 because that's gone already. You'll be working from 6 to 11. Then you'll wake up in the middle of the night and the sweat lashing off you. Wondering what you forgot out of the 150,000 things you have to organise as such. So you'll not get any sleep either. I'm really only 38. But don't let me put you off. If you can come up with a good idea for an event, a good brand, sponsors, you're absolutely crucial in the current economic climate, and a good supporting team of people around you. You cannot do something like this without people that you can absolutely trust 100% that when the going gets tough, they'll get going. And they will. You are completely in the hands of the people around you. And my team at Glenarm have, this summer at Glenarm, we had 14 solid hours of heavy rain. And the team stayed out in that for 14 solid hours. Never came in for their lunch. We carried them out food and hot drink and stuff. And if those guys hadn't have done that, I don't know what we would have done. So, you need a strong team of willing volunteers to come with you on a journey. If you get it right, it can be very rewarding. There is a certain amount of satisfaction when all goes well and you look at the video and you think, did we just do that? That looked okay, actually. But we never see the event. You're so busy, dealing with a man that's broke his two arms round the back, trying to get him to sign his accident report before you help him. But there is a buzz. The event organisers already here, they know what we're talking about. You do get satisfaction and a great buzz from it. Also, if you're doing other stuff, there is a wider context to it, and that you can build your social demographic page. People will come back and visit your other offerings at other times of the year. So you don't have to always just look at the bottom line, although it's really hard to get the bottom line to match up these days. But so there is a wider way of monetizing those feet, possibly at a later date. So that's really all I've got to say, apart from, I'll tell you a wee quick story. We had a very nice sponsor came to sponsor us at Glenarm one time, and they set up a new business locally, and I just rang the guy up and asked him, was there anything I could do for him? And he said, no, I don't think so. And well, I said, if you ever need anything, just give me a shout. If you need a room for a meeting, or you want to bring some guests up sometime, do that. And he says, are you busy tomorrow morning? I says, no, I'm not. He says, would you like to come for breakfast? So he invited me for breakfast. And across the table, he says, what can I do for you? And I says, well, we're having this event. A few quid would be handy for that. And he just whipped out the checkbook and gave me a really good check there and then, twice what I'd asked for. And it was just the fact that I had originally went to him and offered our services to him. So sometimes you have to watch how you make the approach. It's not all about ringing them up and telling them what you can do for them. Sadly to say, though, we were looking after our VIPs and our sponsors very well, and we decided, we'd give them a good time. And we organised a bus to bring them from the hotel up to the festival a few years back. And the bus then to take them back home again so they could all have a wee glass of wine and a bit of a jolly. And when the bus got them all gathered up and they were on their way back to the hotel, the bus driver rang me and he says, "Adrian, we're in trouble." I says, "What's that?" He says, "The wheels come off the bus and she crashed through the wall." And he says, "All your VIP sponsors," he said, "are standing here with the blood running." So I thought that was the end of those sponsors, but no, they all come back and sponsor it again. It was fine. So anyway, thank you very much. Thank you.